Good morning to all of you. It's with great pleasure that we receive you here today for the launch of the 2022 edition of the Global Innovation Index in Brazil. On behalf of the Brazilian Confederation of Industry, Confederação Nacional da Indústria, and the Entrepreneurial Mobilization of Innovation, MEI, Mobilização Empresarial pela Inovação, I want to thank you all for attending this meeting. This event is being broadcast on CNI's YouTube channel. The recording will be available for later access. I have the pleasure to represent the president of CNI, Robson Braga de Andrade, who could not be here today with us. I would also like to thank the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, the editor of the report, the GII Advisory Board, the academic network partners, and especially Mr. Darren Tang, Mr. Sasha Vincent, Mr. Sumitra Dutta, Mr. Denis Herskovits, Mr. André Godoy, and the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of Brazil, Paulo Alvim, the speakers in this event. The GII is a key benchmarking tool for company executives, policymakers, and other stakeholders seeking information on the status of innovation around the world. Brazil now ranks 54 in GII, the progress in 3 positions in the GII 2022 ranking compared to 2021. Despite this improvement, we still are 7 positions behind the 2011 ranking, which at that time was 47. We are still far away from what we want and need to achieve. It's relevant to point out that also Brazil has fallen in the ranking of innovation inputs, having lost 2 positions. The country gained 6 positions in the ranking of innovation results, which explains the improvement in the overall ranking. This shows how the agents of the Brazilian innovation ecosystem did less with more, obtaining better results in innovation. This attests the capabilities of Brazilian companies and how effective MEI has been in the last years. If Brazilian companies have shown themselves to be resilient, the business environment can still improve. In Brazil, as the GII makes clear, we have clear weaknesses that make life difficult for enterprises and other agents of our innovation ecosystem. About our weaknesses, it's possible to mention the policies for doing business, entrepreneurship policies and culture, education measured by PISA scales in reading, math, and science, and the percentage of graduates in science and engineering, gross capital formation as a percentage of the GDP, and loans for microfinance institutions as a percentage of GDP. These bad results are also incompatible with the sophistication of the Brazilian business sector. Indeed, if we look at the 7 GII pillar ranks for Brazil, we can see that the category business sophistication is the pillar in which Brazil is better positioned. However, Brazil does not perform well in knowledge and technology outputs, in infrastructure, and especially in institutions, where Brazil appears in position 102. This shows that the Brazilian innovation ecosystem needs urgent improvements, especially regarding the business environment. The data of this year's publication show that Brazil occupies the 2nd position among Latin American countries in the GII, behind Chile. The theme of this year's GII is the future of innovation-driven growth. This approach is extremely relevant for Brazil, considering the challenges that the country has been facing to increase its productivity, which has been in decline for the last 40 years. We understand that Brazil's innovation can help to increase productivity in our economy. The entrepreneurial mobilization for innovation has made great efforts to improve productivity in the Brazilian industry on the capital and labor side. We have two working groups in education focused on the challenges to improve the Brazilian working force. This year, GII pointed out that education is a weakness in our ecosystem. We believe that our working group in engineering can help our country to improve the percentage of graduates in science and engineering. On the capital side, it's possible to mention we recently created a working group in digital transformation. As pointed out in the chapter written by CNI in this year's GII publication, we understand that the IT sector bringing digital transformation to other sectors of the economy has the power to increase the productive efficiency of an important contingent of companies. Mr. Denis Herskovits will go deeper into this subject in his presentation. At today's debate, we'll have a video recorded by Darren Tang, Director General of WIPO. Then Mr. Sumitra Dutta, Dean of the Said Business School of the University of Oxford, will discuss the position of Brazil in the Global Innovation Index. After that, Sasha Wunsch-Vincent, co-editor of the Global Innovation Index, will present the main result of this year's GII. Denis Herskovits, CEO of TOTUS, will present how it's possible to improve productivity through innovation policies in Brazil. Then we'll hear the speech of André Godoy of the Executive Board of FINEP. Finally, we'll have the honor to receive the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Mr. Paulo César Rezende de Carvalho Alvim. After their speeches, we'll open the floor for questions and comments. The audience questions can be posted in YouTube chat. Thank you. We are going to see now the video of Mr. Darren Tang.
Ladies and gentlemen, bom dia. Welcome to the Brazilian launch of the 2022 WIPO Global Innovation Index, or GII. I'd first like to thank the government of Brazil and the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation for their strong commitment to advancing Brazil's innovation ecosystem. I also like to thank the MEI and the CNI, Brazilian National Confederation of Industry, for hosting today's launch. Since its creation in 2007, the GII has established itself as a powerful tool for designing innovation policies and evaluating innovation performance. The GII is more than just a statistical exercise. It reflects WIPO's mission to strengthen innovation ecosystems around the world. And this year's GII finds that innovation is at a crossroads as we emerge from the pandemic. While investments in innovation continued to grow in 2020 and 2021, the future outlook for innovation is clouded by global uncertainties and a continued slowdown in the performance of innovation-driven productivity. As such, while we welcome the continued commitment to investing in innovation around the world, we think that the world also now needs to pay closer attention to how innovation creates economic and social impact. This is a challenging task, but rest assured that WIPO will continue to support all member states to harness innovation as a powerful catalyst for jobs, investments, and growth. And today, we reaffirm our support for Brazil, whose rise up the GII ranks in recent years has been spectacular. This year, Brazil is placed 54th amongst the 132 economies featured in the GII, up from 70th position in 2015. Brazil is now the second most innovative economy in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is the second consecutive year where Brazil has outperformed expectations for its level of development. These are more than mere figures. Innovation is literally changing the face of the Brazilian economy. For example, the global brand value of top Brazilian companies reached almost $60 billion last year, an increase of 16% from 2020. Around 70% of the value of leading Brazilian firms is now in intangible assets, IP, data, know-how, an important shift from just a decade ago. And Sao Paulo is the only science and technology cluster from the region to appear in the global ranking of the top 100 science and technology clusters. All these remarkable facts and progress is a testament to the high priority Brazil places on supporting innovation-driven growth, as well as to the strong partnership between WIPO, the Government of Brazil, and the CNI. We look forward to our continued collaboration in the years ahead and to supporting Brazil in its ambition to become a global innovation powerhouse. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
We're going to hear now Mr. Sumitra Dutta, please.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for your kind words of introduction. Thank you also for being such a great supporter of the Global Innovation Index project. Pedro is a member of our advisory board for the Global Innovation Index, and we value very much his contributions and his advice over the last several years. I would like to also thank CNI for your collaboration, President Robson, Gianna, and many others who have in fact been very strong supporters of the GII collaboration within CNI, within Brazil over the last several years. And certainly CNI support has been very important in the success of the GII. Now, the Global Innovation Index today has become one of the leading benchmarks in helping nations worldwide think about innovation in a more systematic and more structured manner. This year is the 16th edition of the Global Innovation Index, and I'm very proud to see that the Global Innovation Index has really gone from strength to strength. Last year, WIPO conducted a study of different nations and how they were using the Global Innovation Index. And it was very impressive to see that more than 70 countries around the world were using the Global Innovation Index very, very actively. Earlier today in the morning, we were having a similar global launch or a more regional launch in India, the India launch of the Global Innovation Index. And it was also very impressive to see how the Global Innovation Index has really reached into the upper levels and the core of the innovation planning exercises in India. Now, I'm very pleased that in Brazil also something similar is happening with CNI, with MAE, the whole MAE initiative led by Gianna, and many other parts of the government looking at the Global Innovation Index actively for guidance and support in the innovation planning discussions. Now, innovation today is a very important theme for all nations, including Brazil, and especially so given the kind of forces and turmoil that we are seeing today in the world around us. Now, we have been fortunate to see continued spending in innovation, and the rate of increase in spending innovation has been pretty steady and going up in many parts of the world over the last 10, 15 years. In fact, since the last global financial crisis, many wondered in 2008, 2009, whether the spending on innovation would dry up or whether the financial pressures that governments were facing, that businesses were facing, would in fact lead to a reversal of innovation expenditures. But fortunately, what we have seen is the reverse. Since 2008, 2009, expenditure in innovation has increased around the world, and in fact has exceeded the rate of growth in GDP in most countries. And this has happened largely because businesses have stepped in and have really tried to leverage all the different potential of innovation available to them, such that they become more competitive and they bring more value-added products and services to the market. Now, we have gone through a very important global pandemic in the last 2.5 years, and we are just coming out of the pandemic. And while the pandemic has seen, I think, very strong support for innovation worldwide, and we have seen rapid increases in innovation spending in some domains like healthcare and pharmaceuticals, I think there is a real serious question now about what's going to happen going forward. In Latin America, for example, we saw big increases in venture capital in the last couple of years. Last year, in particular, 2021, was very good, with venture capital increasing 40% or more in many parts of Latin America, including Brazil. But now what we have seen in the first few months of 2022 is that there is a sharp decrease or decline in some of the venture capital funding in the region. And this and other concerns are very important issues that today I think we have to face in the context of Brazil. In Brazil, also what we are facing are important political changes or political developments that may emerge in the coming weeks. There's a national election coming up soon. And of course, there's an important question of stability of policies or changes in policies which will impact trends and forces innovation inside Brazil. So globally, if you look at the overall context, we have seen strong support for innovation spending over the last 10, 15 years. Important questions about innovation support or continued spending innovation over the next several months or years. And a very similar situation is emerging in Brazil too. So I think this will provide some useful thought and a space for reflection about how Brazil should formulate its policies going forward. Now, in the Global Innovation Index, every year, we look at a variety of factors. I encourage you to go to the Global Innovation Index website or to the homepage of WIPO, where you can download the report. You can look at all the details of various countries' performance. You can look at how different countries compare against each other. And very important, look at how innovation is defined inside the Global Innovation Index. Now, inside the Global Innovation Index, we take a broad perspective of innovation. We take a perspective of innovation that innovation is enabled by multiple factors coexisting inside the country. We take an important view of institutions, human capital, infrastructure, the market sophistication, and the business sophistication. These are all elements, or what we call pillars in the model, of inputs into innovation. A country needs to be strong in these elements to be able to do well in innovation. We also look at the knowledge technology outputs and the creative outputs as outputs of innovation. And those elements of the outputs emerge as a result of successful investments in the input. So we look at a broad spectrum of innovation enablers, innovation outputs, and we combine the two into an overall score of innovation performance for a country. As was mentioned earlier by Pedro, the rank this year for Brazil worldwide is 54 among 132 nations. It's a relative rank. So what this means is that in relative terms, Brazil is 54th in this list of 132 countries. Now, what is impressive is that if you look at the trend, in 2020, Brazil was 62nd. So there has been definitely a relative improvement in Brazil's innovation performance over the last few years. Today, if you compare Brazil to Chile, which is the traditional leader in innovation in Latin America, Chile is ranked at position number 54. So you see that Brazil has been making steady progress. And I suspect, and I would in fact argue, that a lot of this progress is because of the progress that important initiatives in Brazil have been making in the area of business sophistication. And the mede program of Brazil is an important element of how the businesses in Brazil have really responded to the need for innovation, because they face all the pressures of competition and global sort of product and service competition of other companies. Now, Pedro did mention the relative strengths and weaknesses of Brazil over the different pillars of the GII. And today, if you look at the most important weakness areas are institutions and infrastructure. Institutions, Brazil is ranked at 102 among 132 nations. On the infrastructure element, Brazil is ranked 65 among 132 nations. Now, clearly, these are elements where in the input enabling dimension, significant progress could be made and should be made. The government in particular has an important role in providing stable, good institutions and a stable and a good environment for supporting innovation in the country. Infrastructure requires a lot of investments, because you don't have enough infrastructure investments, you will not be able to support the needs for innovative industry. And you see similar demand for investments in infrastructure come also in other developed markets like America. President Biden is today, pushed together a massive bill to encourage more investments in American infrastructure. Now, Pedro also mentioned that in terms of enablers, the two strongest pillars for Brazil are business sophistication and market sophistication. In business sophistication, Brazil is ranked at position 35 out of 135 nations. And in market sophistication, Brazil is ranked at position number 49. Now, these are good positions, but in many ways, Brazil could aim for even higher levels of performance in these dimensions. But they are strong positions on which to build. Human capital is always an important element in the innovation debate in countries, and Brazil is today ranked at position 50 in the domain of human capital relative to the 132 nations ranked worldwide. Now, if you look at the enablers, that's the range of performance that you see in Brazil, the best in business sophistication, market sophistication, the least, let's say, strong or the weakest in infrastructure and institutions. Now, if you look at the output side, Brazil is relatively weak on the knowledge and technology outputs, 55 in knowledge technology outputs, and on the creative outputs, it is slightly better, ranked 51. So if you look at the overall picture of Brazil, one can say that it is improving. The direction of travel is good. Businesses are playing a very key role in making this happen. But one can also ask the question, what can be done more to accelerate the pace of progress? Because some other nations are moving faster. Early in the morning, as I said, we had a similar session with India, and India has moved 46 positions in the last 7 years and has really strengthened its position in innovation in many dimensions. So could Brazil do better? The answer is yes. What can Brazil do, or what kind of changes are required to help Brazil perform better? Now, of course, innovation is a very complex debate and requires good performance along multiple dimensions. I always compare it to a chain. If even one link in the chain is weak, the chain overall strength of the chain becomes weak. So it's very important, and it's very difficult for nations to improve on performance in innovation, because you have to actually improve all the different elements at the same time, or at least in a coordinated manner. Now, what are some of the 2 or 3 areas where I think Brazil can certainly aim to slightly do better? One important area is in having some kind of a determined national strategy on innovation. In almost all countries that we see, there is a clear top-down drive from the head of the country, the president, prime minister, whoever is the head of the country, in saying that innovation is important for the future of our nation. And we have to do all that we can to support innovation at all levels, among small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, public sector organizations, and essentially create a culture of innovation inside the country. I think this is something which Brazil could do more of, and create a stronger culture and a stronger vision and a strategy for innovation inside the country. Brazil already has many different bodies that act on elements of innovation, and certainly more coordination across them would help in making some of the action around innovation more stronger and better. Another element which I think Brazil could do better on is really investing more in digital and in deep science. One of the key themes of this year's Global Innovation Index report is the coming waves of innovation that we are seeing from digital and from deep science. I know we'll have Dennis from TOTUS speaking later on about digital, But just the main point to talk about digital is that we are just at the initial years of the digital revolution. For those of us who think that we have seen digital and digital is more or less finished, the answer is as far from the truth as possible. Digital is just starting, and digital will continue to grow exponentially in the next 10, 20, 30 years. The same thing is happening in deep science. Deep science is just starting out, and you will see dramatic changes, dramatic improvements in many areas of biology, material science, and other kinds of nanotechnologies. So what it means is that to take advantage of these areas, Brazil needs to invest more in R&D in these areas, more research in these areas, more investment in human talent, researchers working on these domains in its various universities, in its various corporations, forming more closer links between the academia and industry in Brazil, and essentially trying to move the entire system together such that you're able to build on these enormous opportunities that deep science digital is bringing around us today. Now, the last point that I will say, and of course, there are many different elements that we can talk about, but the last point that I would say is that I think Brazil also needs to work on branding itself on the innovation dimension. Now, Brazil, of course, is a great, powerful country, the rich history and legacy, but the branding of Brazil is not necessarily always around deep tech, around innovation, around high-tech ventures, even though Brazil has a history of doing great work in this area. For example, in ethanol, other kinds of agricultural innovation that have always been a strength of Brazil. But somehow that hasn't been part of the national branding in some element that is very visible to outside people. And this is very important because you want to attract companies to come to Brazil. You want to attract large organizations to set up the research centers in Brazil. Every single research center that sets up in Brazil will fundamentally attract other talent to it and also help spread that new research into the community at large. So you need to basically, I think, and Brazil, work on the branding of innovation, both inside and outside the country. I was, for example, speaking with one of the founders of one of the unicorns in your country. I will not name the company, but he happened to be a friend of mine from my school before. And when his company reached unicorn status, I asked him, was there some kind of celebration of the fact that your company is now a unicorn? And did, for example, some of the government invite you, where you invited to actually go and give presentations and so on? And he said, no, nothing has happened, unfortunately. And I think you need to be able to celebrate the successes of the tech leaders, of the innovation leaders inside the country, and to be able to spread the word both inside the country and also outside. So I think building the brand of Brazil around innovation, both inside and outside, is very important because you want to excite people to come to Brazil, to innovate in Brazil, and to be able to work with all the great resources available in Brazil. So I think, on the whole, I would say is that lots of good news out here in terms of Brazil's performance. Lots of question marks also, both given the pandemic, both given global turmoil, and also given the election that's coming up in Brazil. So important elements to keep track of. Yet at the same time, some areas for action that I think we can take as lessons from both Brazil's history and also from other countries that have worked on this topic. So back to you, Pedro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumitra. We'll now hear Mr. Sasha Wunsch-Vincent, please. I think we can't hear you. I see you're fine now, Sasha. Go ahead.
Yes, this should be better now. Yeah, sorry. So I was saying that it's very hard to add anything to Sumitra anyway. Now he has really covered the main theme of the GII 2022, the particular Brazilian position within the GII, and also some of the most salient policy or so suggestions. Let me pick up on the last point. So I feel as well, and again, as we all know, there is real innovation performance, and then there is the perception, as Sumitra said, of the performance within the country and abroad. It seems, in fact, that your Berlin perspective on how well you're doing is probably slightly less well as you're actually doing, right? Based on the international indicators that you have. And you're not alone, right? When I talk in Germany, for instance, my home country, it's about the same thing, right? The national discourse is much more pessimistic, or overvaluing the weaknesses and undervaluing certain strengths, right? So I think for a number of years now, it would have been very hard to argue that the innovation performance of Brazil has accelerated in any meaningful way, that there has been any sort of turning point that would have any significance. But I would argue that this year, given the consistency of the improvement and what we have seen on the ground, including at the enterprise level, that this is possibly a turning point. And but you have to make it a turning point, right? Also, with respect to how the messaging is crafted to the outside world. And this refers to a point that Sumitra made in terms of branding. And it's very interesting. So I had the pleasure to have a lot of similar meetings in many countries, obviously, but most recently also in Turkey, because obviously this year it was India, Turkey, Brazil, and a few other countries that were really highlighted in the GII, aside from China, of course. And if you think about Turkey, I mean, if I ask you on the spot, name me 3-4 companies, right? Turkish companies of innovative potential that would be known in Brazil, either by top people like you or even by people on the street. It's very hard, right? Now, Brazil has already an advantage, but we always say the same companies, right? Embraer, thanks to Pedro, of course, in part. Vale, certain mining sectors. So they're in certain cosmetics and so forth, always come over and over, and Toto was mentioned by Sumitra. I think it might be time to bundle the sort of successes as Sumitra said, and maybe together you frame this as a positive success story going forward. What will also help you is, of course, the cluster ranking, where Sao Paulo always is among the top 100 science technology clusters in the GII. And it's the only one, if I remember correctly, in the whole of Latin America. And this year we extended the cluster ranking, and 2 or 3 additional Brazilian clusters crept in. So this would be just, one homework, obviously, for all of us is to study the weaknesses. Sumitra mentioned a few, but I think the other homework for all of us is to spin a positive success story about success, which is in fact for real on the ground, right? And to make sure that this reaches people abroad, right? Down to Germany, India, Turkey, and etc. And it has to do a lot of with branding and perception, right? And as the journalists during the press conference, or yesterday we had a lot of press interviews and so forth, and obviously this is a virtuous circle, right? You display success, you obtain success, etc., etc. Voilà. Now I have a full presentation on Brazil as well, Pedro, and I could spin this for an hour, but I think you all have the country brief, and you probably have read it more closely than me by now. So I really suggest we open it up then, and I give it back to you to hear from our distinguished other panelists.
Thank you, Sasha. I'll now turn. Thank you, Sasha. I'll now turn the floor to Mr. Denis Hersovitseu of TOTUS. He will present how it's possible to improve productivity through innovation in Brazil. Denis, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Pedro. Do you all hear me well? Perfect. So great to be here. It's a pleasure. Sumitra, Sasha, André, Minister Paulo Alvim. Again, good to be here and to be able to share some thoughts with you. And from my side, I have prepared a few remarks here, so it won't take very long. Obviously, the issue of productivity for Brazil and for TOTUS as a company is a very important matter here. So I think that we are well positioned to speak a little and to try to give to you our vision on how to improve this productivity through innovation. So beginning, I would say that productivity growth is a crucial source of growth in living standards. Productivity growth means more value is added in production, and this means more income is available to be distributed. It is also a key element in securing the competitive advantage for the Brazilian economy, especially in a world that is in constant change and disruption. Therefore, productivity growth cannot be sustained only by the efforts of the private sector. It needs the support from many other stakeholders, like city, state, and the federal governments, civil society, education institutions, among many others. Unfortunately, productivity growth has decelerated, as we have already heard, in the last decades, all over the world. It is not only in Brazil. Even the appearance of the internet and the changes it brought to the business environment has not been able to reverse this trend. In Brazil, this phenomena has also been observed. In our specific case, there are several factors that help to explain this situation. Informality, prevalence of smaller companies, reduction in the pace of population growth, combined with its aging, have made it difficult to sustain the gains of the past. Specifically for industry and the manufacturing sector, there are many new challenges. Industry is potentially the biggest contributor to productivity growth. Its relevance cannot be underestimated. It represents more than 20% of the GDP and of the jobs in the country. It also has close to 70% of Brazil's exports and its R&D investments. The main challenges to industry arise from a combination of changes in the plant floor and to changes in the supply chains. Industry 4.0, from automation, IoT, big data, 3D printing, and an endless number of innovations, have been gaining ground among the top companies in the world and in the most advanced countries. They may be part of the answer to recover productivity growth. As Sumitra himself has said, this is just the beginning of this process of innovation. In Brazil, due to the high level of informality and the relevance of small companies, the penetration of these factors is still very low. There is robust evidence that digital transformation and lean manufacturing can be strong tailwinds to propel the growth in productivity for small businesses. The change they can bring to them is stronger than to the larger enterprises, which already have much better productivity levels. It also has an additional benefit, which is to help reduce informality among these companies. And, as we already have stated, reducing informality enhances productivity growth. So there is clearly a virtuous cycle here. On the other hand, the new geopolitical risks are forcing many industries and supply chains to duplicate in an effort to reduce these risks. Unfortunately, this doesn't help to increase productivity. In this regard, Brazil, being a continental-sized country and having less dependency of global supply chains, has a potential advantage. For Brazil, we believe the path to a sustainable productivity growth that will help the society to achieve a higher level of income should be based on, first, a reduction in informality, both in terms of companies and employment. Through this, they could start to have access to much needed support from government and from the financial markets. And having this support, they can begin their journey to a better productivity based on new processes, new machinery, better workforce, among many other benefits. In a continental country like Brazil, with a very diversified economy, informality is not standardized. Depending on the region and economic sector, it will have very different levels. Second, an increase in the digitalization of the economy and, in particular, of the smaller companies. Here, the large local tech companies, many of them world-class, have a fundamental role to play. TOTUS, being the largest tech company in Brazil, has some examples of successful developments. It has always focused, for example, its main efforts on the SMEs. Therefore, it is constantly developing products and services that are tailored specifically for them, with a go-to-market strategy that is adherent and, most important, affordable for the SMEs. Currently, we have more than 70,000 clients all over the country, in all segments of the economy, in many different sizes and levels of sophistication. The ability to bring tools that help them implement these resources will increase their productivity. More recently, for example, TOTUS has been developing a new and enhanced strategy of building an ecosystem of 3 dimensions, where TechFin and business performance will help these companies to improve access and quality to these kinds of technologies. Thirdly, spreading of lean manufacturing techniques might seem like a sophisticated challenge. However, especially when focusing on SMEs, there are several different techniques that are low complexity and could be extensively deployed and would drive growth in productivity almost immediately. Fourth, better use of existing technical education institutions. As we all know, there can be no improvements in productivity without a robust process of qualification of the workforce. The current gaps in qualified professionals, including in industry, is a severe constraint. On the other hand, there is an extensive network of technical education institutions available all over the country. Therefore, to better integrate and coordinate efforts between all stakeholders here is essential for success. In this regard, a concerted effort by the private sector is important. TOTUS is among the leaders in bringing or trying to bring companies together, sharing best practices and looking to improve the entire process and its results. Finally, an improvement of the business environment would help a lot. Even though there are reasons to be optimistic, the reality is that Brazil, as we have already seen, has slipped some positions in the Global Innovation Index. And one of the reasons is exactly the difficulty of doing business. Therefore, reforms in the tax code, governmental action that reduce bureaucracy and incentivize investments in R&D are all needed to help the country recover its competitive position. I thank you all, and I will be here for more discussions when needed. Thank you very much, Pedro. Back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Very interesting speech. I now pass the word to André Godoy, who's one of the key members of the executive board of FINEP, a major financing agency for science, technology, and innovation in Brazil. André, please.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here representing FINEP, the Brazilian Innovation Agency, a state-owned company linked to the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. This debate that is so important to monitor the course of innovation in our country, reflecting on advances and obstacles to the promotion of innovation in the country based on technical techniques as relevant and qualify as the Global Innovation Index. I will speak in Portuguese. É muito importante para o setor público e para a FINEP em particular, entidade que represento, fazer parte ativamente dessa discussão, justamente para entender como a sua ação da agência de inovação contribui para a melhoria do ambiente de inovação e do seu financiamento. Identificar novos pontos de atenção que demandem a atuação, intervenções diferentes em termos de políticas públicas que sejam adequadas à situação do país em cada um dos pilares, em particular aqueles que são atinentes a uma instituição de financiamento de projetos de inovação em tecnologia e ciência. Eu vou conduzir aqui, em particular, a minha fala, justamente tendo como referência a atuação da FINEP nos pilares nos quais ela mais tem a sua contribuição a dar. Eu vou me restringir a alguns pilares de forma bem específica. Em primeiro lugar, aquele que foi o pilar no qual o país mais se destacou, que por um acaso é aquele também no qual a FINEP se relaciona mais diretamente à sofisticação dos negócios, das empresas. Nesse último ano, a FINEP conduziu a maior ação com recursos para parques tecnológicos de toda a sua história. Foram selecionados 29 parques tecnológicos em todo o país, que receberão mais de 300 milhões ao longo dos próximos 5 anos. E sendo que 5 desses parques estão nas regiões Norte, Nordeste e Centro-Oeste. Isso é muito importante, sobretudo quando a gente trata da questão da desigualdade regional no ecossistema de inovação, que é tão importante para que a gente alavanque a produtividade do país. Lembrando que grande parte do tema da produtividade está relacionado aos baixos níveis de produtividade da economia informal. Se nós queremos pensar no desenvolvimento da inovação no país como um todo, pensar nas desigualdades regionais é de suma importância. O orçamento para a subvenção econômica, que é o instrumento mais importante para alavancar a inovação tecnológica nas empresas, não sou eu que digo isso, isso é em todo o mundo, também teve um recorde na série histórica, de um orçamento superior, em mais de 10 vezes o que a gente havia aprovado, o país havia aprovado há 4, 5 anos atrás. Outro pilar tratado no índice é a questão da sofisticação de mercado, isso sim, a gente tem um caminho a avançar, e eu vou falar um pouquinho do investimento público na inovação brasileira. Investimento esse tão essencial, tal como o privado, mas que tem a sua essencialidade, especialmente diante de um contexto de crise econômica que nós vivemos no país e no mundo, decorrente da pandemia de Covid-19, quebra de cadeias de suprimentos, guerras e seus desdobramentos. O financiamento público à inovação foi e será essencial diante do tamanho e da complexidade dos desafios impostos por essas crises para o mundo e para o Brasil. A maior contribuição da FINEP nesse pilar, por meio da desburocratização de processos, da facilitação de procedimentos para acesso a recursos, isso é, tornar o Estado mais leve, mais fácil de ser acessado e com mais efetividade, por sua vez. Atualmente, a FINEP disponibiliza de forma contínua recursos para subvenção econômica, quebrando um paradigma importante, necessário para as empresas inovadoras e de base tecnológica. A disponibilização de recursos de subvenção em fluxo contínuo é uma mudança de paradigma no financiamento público à inovação, reduzindo a carga burocrática, reduzindo prazos e tornando o Estado mais eficiente, contribuindo para o pilar de sofisticação de mercado, mas também quando a gente trata de aspectos regulatórios, que tratam da questão do Estado mais leve. E a expectativa é que, ao longo dos próximos anos, seja possível observar impactos mais robustos dessas ações que têm, obviamente, retornos de longo prazo, não são retornos imediatos. Ainda falando sobre as perspectivas para os próximos anos, para o investimento público, eu destaco ainda a maior disponibilidade de recursos, aumento da disponibilidade de recursos não reembolsáveis, ainda que possamos aumentar, ter um cenário ainda mais positivo, e essa é realmente uma demanda tanto do setor privado quanto das instituições de ciência e tecnologia. Além disso, a redução de custos de captação para empréstimos para empresas que pretendem inovar. Esse é o papel do setor público, esse é o papel da FINEP, de compartilhar riscos com o setor privado, podendo avançar naquelas tecnologias, como bem salientou o professor Sumitra Dutta mais cedo, daquelas deep techs, né? Daquelas tecnologias onde a necessidade de compartilhamento de risco é ainda mais necessária. Por fim, um terceiro pilar em que a atuação da FINEP se destaca, na parte de capital humano, a FINEP vem desenvolvendo ações, e só no último ano foram aprovados mais de 100 projetos, em mais de 400 milhões de reais, destinados à pesquisa básica, à produção científica, laboratorial no país. Por fim, para encerrar, eu só queria reforçar nossas perspectivas para os próximos anos. Nós sabemos do tamanho dos nossos desafios enquanto país, enquanto FINEP, enquanto Ministério de Ciência, Tecnologia e Inovações, e dizemos que a FINEP está pronta para trabalhar na articulação necessária entre setor privado, academia e governo, um ponto crucial para a inovação tecnológica, para que ela possa ocorrer, e para que a gente possa ter um desenvolvimento da inovação no Brasil tão importante, para que a gente possa atingir nossas metas de digitalização, de sustentabilidade e de investimento em tecnologias disruptivas. Entendemos que tão importante quanto o volume orçamentário e sua estabilidade, quando a gente trata de setor público, é a sua estabilidade. Tão importante quanto o volume, a sua estabilidade. E nós da FINEP estamos preparados para seguir nos transformando e contribuindo para a transformação do Brasil por meio do fomento à inovação. Agradeço a audiência de todos e mãos à obra.
Muito obrigado, André. Thank you very much, André. I now pass the floor to the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Mr. Paulo César Rezende de Carvalho Alvim. Please, Mr. Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Pedro. Good morning. First of all, I thank CNI for the invitation and salute its president, Mr. Robson Andrade, and Mr. Pedro, head of the Executive Committee of MEI, and all the others who have joined us today. We're happy to receive the results from the 2022 edition of the Global Innovation Index, GII, especially because we understand that we're moving towards our goal to become a worldwide innovation leader. In the last few years, Brazil has leaped from position 62 in the index to 64, a quite relevant advance, even considering the challenging conditions of the global pandemic and its social and economic impacts. We rank second among the economies in Latin America, and the Caribbean, and especially our innovation. Performance is above expectation for our level of development, as the number in the 2022 edition of GII showed. We also have São Paulo as the only science and technology cluster among the top 100 in the world. Obviously, these facts are no reason for complacency, and we strive to be worldwide innovation leaders in the future. Still, these stats are a testament to the strength of our country, which is known for its abundant natural research, but should also be recognized for its capable and creative workforce, its wide level of entrepreneurship, a robust research ecosystem, among other aspects. Innovation is key to make the most of our capabilities and to move Brazil towards a path of sustainable development. As such, we've worked hard to foster the innovation ecosystem in our country. We've established a new paradigm for governance by means of a national innovation policy to be implemented with the support of an innovation chamber, which brings together different government agencies in order to improve coordination effectiveness. We've increased the fund for STI projects, focus on key areas such as nanotechnologies, advanced materials, artificial intelligence, Industry 4.4, 5.0, among others. We're investing heavily in innovation environments, using a layering approach that orders different kinds of incentives aligned to the maturity of each ecosystem. We've also had a strong focus on innovative entrepreneurship, with a variety of programs designed to support startup companies all over its life cycle, including specific ones for women entrepreneurs, for strategic sectors, and open innovation initiatives. We've also been fostering innovation in the public sector, creating specific programs that accelerate the adoption of new technologies within government agencies. Innovative partnership arrangements, such as the one implemented by Embrapa, have improved the synergy between research institutions and business, offering a pathway for the manufacturing sector to modernize itself, improve its productivity, and develop innovative and attractive solutions in a sustainable manner. There's been also a strong focus on creating networks of research institutions focused on key subjects in an effort to improve coordination and accelerate results. We understand the role of public finance in fostering innovation. We've been able to increase the government spending in funding programs in the last few years, despite the very challenging budget environment. We expect to continue raising the amount of public funds for innovation in the future, and we're also working hard to leverage this investment with private funding, both from Brazil and abroad. In Brazil, private investment in innovation is still way below what we see in innovation leaders as a share of GDP. Therefore, our ambition is to develop innovative instruments and create a welcome environment and allows for the reduction of this gap. One of the key aspects for a thriving innovation environment is an adequate regulatory framework. As such, we've been working on both introducing new legislation and creating initiatives that improving the effectiveness of the current legal system. One of our major milestones has been the legal framework for Startups, which has been approved in 2021 and has both created a better legal environment for the development of such companies, but also introduce relevant new concepts such as regulatory sandbox and simplify innovation procurement rules. We've been also working with Congress to establish a legal framework for artificial intelligence, and we are seeking to improve the governance of our national research and innovation system through a new law which is currently under public consultation. It's also part of our work to force the usage of the instruments established in the legal framework for science, technology, and innovation approved in 2016. This has been done through a variety of strategies such as education, events, funding, among others. We also understand that digital transformation is a key component of any innovation strategy. We've had since 2018 a Brazilian digital transformation strategy, which is currently under review. It has spun off into specific plans for cybersecurity, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence, among other subjects. We've been particularly focused on education, since Brazil, as many other countries, has currently a shortage of qualified personnel in ICT. Therefore, through the MCT Future program, we've already given relevant training of thousands of people supporting the development of IT sector in our country, reducing unemployment and increasing overall productivity in the economy. The program has also focused on solutions for popular science, their early grades, seeking to bring IT literacy at all levels and minimize the so-called digital divide. It's also important to mention that Brazil has worked hard in the last few years to improve its business environment, which has a positive effect on innovation. It is now much easier and faster to open a new company. Paperwork has been reduced, government service has been made available online, and regulations have been slashed or simplified. Our patent office has also improved its analysis time significantly, a long-held demand from both the private sector and the research community. We expect that such changes will have a cumulative effect which will be noticed throughout the years in the future. Finally, we're grateful for the partnership with WIPO, since GII has been a relevant source of information for us, which has supported the development of our innovation policy. The perspective of strength this cooperation in the future. I once again thank CNI, Mr. Pedro, for the invitation and wish you all a very nice day. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. I think we have time for some few questions, which I intend to address generally to the speakers. The first question I got here from the audience regards the reorganization of the global value chains due to the war in Ukraine and to the situation in Europe today. Terms like friendshoring and nearshoring are starting to appear everywhere. And Brazil has probably a unique position to improve its position in the world economy by supplying products and services to these countries. But certainly innovation has to play a role here. Otherwise, probably we won't be competitive. So question is, the new value chain reorganization of the world and the innovation aspects of it, how can this be addressed by the Brazilian economy, by the Brazilian government and the Brazilian private sector?
Maybe, Pedro, if you allow me.
Please go ahead, Sasha.
I'll make
Sumitra, go ahead, Sumitra.
Make one comment.
Yes.
Then I'm sure my colleagues will join in. It is a fact that there is a reorganization of the global value chains. And of course, it started some years ago with the whole US-China sort of separation of some kind. And now, of course, with other kind of trends we are seeing globally, including the Ukraine war situation. But what we have to keep in mind is that clearly there will be some winners in this reorganization, but the winners will need to show that they are capable of providing world-class services in a secure, reliable manner. So if you do not have an environment which is stable institutionally, or you don't have an environment where the infrastructure allows for smooth travel of goods and services, or you do not have a digital infrastructure that is cyber secure and that is reliable for people to use for service, offshoring or nearshoring, you will not really be able to benefit from that. Any one of these kinds of reorganizations also require talent, people. So I think the investments in the various elements of the enablers of the Global Innovation Index point to the kind of things that companies will look for before they make choices about reorganizing the value chains. Brazil has a huge advantage because Brazil is one of the few countries in the world that is in many ways self-sufficient from resources, from other kinds of human talent elements. And I think Brazil can really leverage it, but Brazil needs to provide those basic enablers for innovation for its own enterprises to be innovative, for enabling foreign companies to set up those innovative businesses and organizations inside Brazil. So investments are critical to support that kind of nearshoring, friendshoring operations. And I think Brazil and the innovation policy of Brazil should certainly support that.
Thank you, Sumitra. Dennis, would you like to comment on that, please, regarding services?
Yeah, thank you, Pedro. Thank you again. Well, first of all, I do agree with everything that Sumitra has said, and I think that I touched a little bit on this opportunity that Brazil has, and I would only add that in addition to being a continental-sized country that is very far from the geopolitical troubles that have been plaguing the planet recently, and apart from having the advantages of having energy sources that do not depend on others, and lots of other different types of very strategic commodities, Brazil is also a country that is a very diversified economy and a very large internal market. And when you think about the possibilities of combining these two elements of a very sizable and very diversified and sophisticated internal market with these opportunities of being a provider for external markets that are not so secure on their current supply chains or value chains, I do believe that Brazil is in a very important position, and we have the obligation as a country to take advantage of this. And as we all said, this is not something for only one stakeholder. So to believe that only the government or only society or only educational institutions or only the private will be able to address everything that is needed to take this advantage, I think that we will not be there. So it is a concerted effort that is required. And I hope that all these stakeholders bring these investments and this coordination together for us to succeed.
Pedro, if I may, just piggyback a little bit on our colleague Pedro's here. So of course, Sumitra has a point about displaying reliability and secure service provision. So that is obviously also linked to the reputational questions we discussed earlier. But other than that, and this is pure conjecture and more in my private personal capacity or as one of an economist, I cannot disagree with my predecessor from Tutus in a way, because so the geographic position obviously of Brazil allows for many north-south sort of like Latin America sort of dealings plus Latin America, Europe, right? So you have quite a large part of the Western Hemisphere and to Europe, maybe Africa, as a new playing ground, if I may say so. The situation of the countries that we are advising in Asia, right? Or in fact, those of Africa. I mean, think about Asia. Monday we will discuss with Vietnam, later with Malaysia. Think about Bangladesh, who had high hopes for ICT services exports, Pakistan. A lot of those, African, sub-Saharan African countries, northern, who had high hopes for integration in global manufacturing chains. This is much more difficult as a proposition than it was 2 years ago, right? I mean, first the pandemic, but then now with the high energy prices and other disruptions. I would like to imagine, but this is something we would have been hoping for decades, right? For a strong North Latin America sort of, and even Latin America sort of Europe sort of triangle, which offers sufficient sufficient potential actually for upscaling and market development, in my humble view. In particular, also with the large internal market that you have, right? So that could be part of your branding proposition too, by the way, right? To actually frame yourself as with the energy position and the geographical isolation in a way of Brazil from these other troubles as a unique value proposition, almost like for a company. But look, Sumitra, you're the business professor here, and Pedro, so I'm not a corporate leader, but it sounds to me as a very interesting proposition.
Pedro.
André, por favor.
As a funding agency for innovation projects, I think we are in a position that we can assess some movements that we can see in innovative companies. So I'm going to talk about something that is already happening and it's relative to the fact that the disruption in the world. It's already happening, a verticalization of production in innovative companies. That we are seeing that. We are seeing projects that some companies that they are entering into components that in other times they were important. This does not mean a return to the policy of import substitution due to the need that Sumitra said, that the products must be world class. I would like to say that I think that's an opportunity, but it brings a challenge. Of developing innovation and products that are internationally competitive. It's an opportunity to do that because in other ways we're importing that. But it's important to produce and to be innovative but be competitive internationally, even in this situation. I think that's important.
Thank you, André. Does anyone else have any comment on this question? Let me then go to a second issue that has been raised by the attendants. which is the issue of bioeconomy. As we all know, Brazil has been under very strong pressure from environmental groups regarding what's going on in the Amazon. On the other hand, most people see a big opportunity for Brazil to develop new products based on our Brazilian biodiversity. So this could be a new source of revenues for the Brazilian government and a new source of jobs for people in that area. The research institutions in Amazonia, the state of Amazonia specifically, are clearly underfunded. So in order to have more innovations from biodiversity, probably the action of the Brazilian government will have to change. And the Brazilian sector, the private sector, would also need to look into these opportunities with more attention, given the interest also of the international community and the consumers at large to receive products. They would welcome products based on Brazilian biodiversity. I would like to hear the comments of our speakers today on this issue, please.
Let me start. I don't think, let's put it this way. So let me just say I couldn't agree more, but this is, of course, a very sensitive political terrain. So I will let other persons speak to this, but it strikes me as a wonderful addition to the reputational, as a reputational asset for the Brazilian image, that it would like to display as part of this new innovation pivot.
So maybe if I add one comment,
please, Sumitra.
I think, this is one of the strengths of Brazil. And biodiversity is something which the world today is realizing is very important for our future. And this is where Brazil can take a lead. I think Brazil has a lead through organizations, that it has, like Embrapa and others that do work in some of these important domains. And companies like Natura, which have built a global brand based on this kind of branding and focus in its own products and services. So I do think that Brazil can and should try to use biodiversity as a strength, should try to do more research in this area. There's a lot of scope for doing research, both deep science research and digital, and try to build more companies that build global brands like Natura based on this kind of more sustainability and world environment friendly sort of focus. Because unfortunately what happens is, I think a lot of what is happening in the Amazon sometimes gets a little negative visibility, negative press outside, and that sort of colors sometimes the image of the world about Brazil's position on some of these important elements. And I think Brazil should really take the advantage of trying to focus and build up the key industry, key research organization in this area, and try and show the world that it can lead in this area. And Brazil has all the resources. I mean, look at the natural resources that Brazil has. Only, 2 or 3 countries in the world have the same kind of depth of natural resources. The handful of 2 or 3 countries that can match or even hope to come close to Brazil in that area.
Thank you, Sumitra. Would Andrea or the minister comment on this issue?
Pedro, I think the biodiversity economy, it's really important for special areas in Brazil. But it's not the same thing when you go to the Amazon. It's not the same environment. We have different Amazons in the Amazon. And we have areas that we must maintain the forest. That's important. And we need different kind of instruments to maintain the forest as it is. We have the transition areas that we must reforestate and we must substitute or at least do the same thing with much less impact. And we have cities in the Amazon. That's important to see. We have big cities in the Amazon, that we have urban areas in the Amazon, and we must fix the problems of urban areas, because the relation between the urban areas and the forests are really important. And we need three kind of instruments for biodiversity in the Amazon area. We need for this part of the forest. That's important to see the different kind in science and technology and biodiversity and as Natura and other companies. We need policies and we need instruments and finance projects for the areas that are in transition, that we need, like to agriculture, the more sustainable one, that other kind of instruments. And we need, of course, for the urban areas, especially digitization of companies, because we are talking about that's so important, the 5G and other things, that it's important for the digitization of companies and people in the urban areas, in the rural areas. So that's important to say, because when we talk about biodiversity, it's not just one thing that we need to do. There are some policies that are needed to do that. I think that's my contribution.
Thank you, André. Thank you, André. I think we are almost coming to a close of this session, but I want to ask a technical question that has been raised by some of the viewers, especially to Sumitra and to Sasha, regarding the influence on the COVID pandemic on the index this year. We do know that some of the figures to calculate the position of each country in the GAI are related to past year, to 21, but some of them might be related also to 2020, so to former years. So is there still, I guess there's still an influence, or people guess that there's still an influence on the index and on the Brazilian position coming from COVID. How do you see this, and do you expect next year figures to be already immune of these issues?
Which should I go first, or?
Yes, please go.
Yeah, so indeed, while we are not capturing at all any of the influences triggered by the geopolitical tensions and wars of the like, which started in 2022. Indeed, the GII has data from 2020 for many indicators, and also for some indicators for 2022. Now, very interestingly, as we explained yesterday, and as the minister emphasized in his speech too, the negative impact of the crisis on innovation expenditures in the corporate sector, venture capital, even to some extent, certain production figures hasn't been at all negative for many countries. In particular, not the countries such as China, Turkey, and also Brazil. For some countries, there was a funny interaction of the expenditure and the scaling factor. I mean, sorry to be technical, but of course, as you know, we scale many variables by GDP, right? So you have R&D expenditures on the one hand, we scale. So a number of countries had seen great volatility between 2020 and 2021 in terms of the GDP, with the GDP falling and then going up strongly again. And so it might have had a short-term fluctuation impact. But this is not really the case for many countries. As you've seen in the index, it has been relatively stable still across 2021, 22. I guess one reason is that the COVID pandemic, it's probably one of the first crises of that nature, has had a relatively, sorry the word, democratic effect on all countries pretty much at the same time. Well, with Asia going first and then others following. But and so if everybody is slowed in terms of the index, at least, the relative performance to one another is similar. Now, in terms of the next steps, again, we're getting back to the question, the earlier question, Pedro. There might be some differential sort of like impact. I mean, I do think that the current geopolitical crisis affects certain players in the global value chains differently than others, and there might be an opportunity for Brazil. Over to, I don't know, Sumitra, you want to compliment maybe, or?
No, I don't have anything to add, Sasha. I think you explained it well.
Okay, I would like then to thank all the speakers, Sumitra, Sasha, Denis, André, and especially to the Minister, Paulo Alvim. It has been an honor to have you on our session today. I'd like to thank Jena Sagazio for putting together this meeting, organizing this event. And on behalf of Mr. Robson Andrade, I would like to finish this, to end this session. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend. And we'll have strong emotions in this country, as most of you know. We are going to have presidential elections next Sunday. So we have a very effective electoral system. So we expect to have the results before midnight on Sunday itself. Thank you all.